So we have been listening there to Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum as she is holding a press conference right now to do with the tariffs imposed by the U.S. But this is following a conversation that she had with the U.S. President Donald Trump, and it appears that they have reached an agreement to pause the tariffs for 1 month. Now, this is according again to Mexico's president, who says that the conversation with Trump was long, covered subjects of mutual interest, and that she proposed this pause, also saying that she asked for the U.S. to help stem traffic of guns coming from the U.S., and Trump was in agreement. I do want to bring in the CBC's Alex Panetta in Washington on this. You know, Alex, it's important as we listen in to what we're hearing from Mexico's president that often the recollections of these conversations between two leaders, between Donald Trump and another leader, are very different when we hear them recalled by one versus the other party here. So we are watching what is happening here because perhaps is there an opportunity for Canada to also pause the tariffs with a conversation? We'll have to wait and see, and also get confirmation, of course, from Donald Trump. What do you make of what we've been hearing here?
Yeah, well, I make of, first of all, congratulations to Claudia Sheinbaum, because she single-handedly created maybe hundreds of billions of dollars in wealth around the world by basically recovering a point on the Dow Jones Industrial Average within basically several minutes. Stock market in New York had dropped 1.5 points, and it had recovered an entire point almost immediately after she began speaking about her conversation with Trump. That's the first thing I make of it. The second thing is, you know, my spidey sense kind of started tingling earlier this morning when President Trump posted on Truth Social that he intended to speak with the leaders twice today, that he has a call planned with them in the morning and the afternoon. That sounds like someone who is looking for a plot twist, all right? You don't talk to them twice in a day to tell them, yeah, these tariffs are going on as scheduled. Certainly not after you have not taken Prime Minister Trudeau's calls for days. So, you know, that tells me that maybe something is brewing. We'll see. And then it'll have to be up to Canada and Mexico. It sounds like Mexico's made up its mind. Canada would have to decide whether it wants to live in a world where you're constantly being threatened with tariffs. And it sounds like Trump, what he has in mind is to say, I want the following policy changes, and you have another month to deliver them. Certainly that's what it sounds like his conversation with Mexico is developing like. And that's, you know, Ottawa's going to have to decide whether it's willing to agree to those terms and say, yeah, we'll negotiate changes X, Y, Z in exchange for having this never-ending carousel of threats, I've referred to it as in my stories, continue for another few weeks.
And, you know, Alex, I want to, of course, bring in, too, that I was saying we have to wait to see what President Donald Trump has to say about this. And, of course, he has posted, it appears on social media, saying that I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the U.S. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal immigrants into our country. And there's more to the post, but of course I wanted to take from it that he is confirming that conversation did take place and that there will be a pause, because of course it's important that we look at both of the conversations and the recounting of both conversations too. So also, Alex, you know, as mentioned, this trade war affects, you know, Canada and the U.S. and of course Mexico. It appears that they've brokered some sort of agreement. Let's talk a little bit about the mood in Washington, as you've written about, when we're starting to see the onset of this potential trade war here.
Yeah, you know, this isn't just a trade spat. I've written that this is, you know, fundamentally different from, you know, what we've known in the past, certainly in our lifetime. A dispute with the United States is usually, Americans say, oh, we don't like how you're regulating your crown lands for harvesting softwood lumber, so here's a duty on that specific product. This is a wide-ranging economic threat that turns the page on an entire era, 90 years, changes the world as we've known it. You know, 90 years ago, Canada and the United States negotiated the end to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, the Depression-era tariffs on hundreds of products. And that was the beginning of a long project of North American integration. We often talk about the Auto Pact, but this came first. 30 years later, you get the Auto Pact in 1965. You get Canada-U.S. trade in 1987. You get NAFTA, the first one, in 1994, and then, you know, CUSMA in 2018. And throughout this time, Canada becomes more increasingly tethered to the United States economically and geopolitically. Just in the last few years, Canada has has kicked Chinese state-owned enterprises out of its mining sector. It's banned Huawei from the 5G network. It arrested Meng Wanzhou. It's put tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles and other Chinese products. The thinking was, we're going to cast our lot firmly with the United States in this emerging geopolitical order. We're going to be in the American tent. Well, the threat of tariffs on everything across the board means there is no American orbit. There is no tent. It's every man for himself and every man, woman, and child for himself in this jungle, the law of the jungle that's returning in a way we haven't seen for generations. And that's a fundamentally different world, and one that Canada doesn't know, nor is it prepared for. And I know there's no easy answer about how you prepare for a world like that.
We've talked so much, too, Alex, about the unpredictability of this U.S. president. And certainly we've seen that within the first 10 days or 2 weeks of the presidency as well. And I know you touched on this as we were coming out of the statement from Mexico's president as well. I'm wondering, there has been a tense relationship for years between Trudeau and Trump. So is there any capacity, any runway here for there to be an agreement similar to what we've seen with Mexico when it comes to the tariffs on Canada? Because sometimes, of course, your analysis is very insightful here. Sometimes when it comes to the U.S. president, these can be sort of personal moves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the thing about using tariffs as a threat is it's only effective if you use the tariffs sometimes. You can't constantly back away like you did with Colombia the other day, and it appears may be happening with Mexico and may happen with Canada. Once in a while, somebody's got to get their nose bloodied, to use the schoolyard analogy. If you want to scare the other kids, somebody's got to get knocked out. And nobody wants to be that person that Trump makes an example of. That said, I think there definitely is potential for some sort of arrangement. If it's happened, or we're receiving indications it may have. With Mexico, I don't see why it wouldn't happen with Canada. I think that the greatest surprise here in Washington about these tariffs is that Canada was targeted this significantly. I think, everyone here kind of expected moves on China. People expected maybe some moves on Mexico, maybe tougher trade policy with respect to Canada, but not this. I'll just show you just a few newspaper headlines. It's actually surprised me, trade war, front page of the New York Times. And there's a lot going on here. President turns on closest allies, Washington Post, front page, right? And Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal. It's front page news here across the board. It was a lead story on a couple of American newscasts this morning, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot going on here. Elon Musk is taking over the U.S. federal government payment system. They're canceling. Basically, it sounds like the U.S. Agency for International Aid, the entire aid department is being eliminated and possibly folded into the State Department today. There are lots of pieces of news in this town. So for this to be atop the agenda is quite something. And the surprise I've heard here is not that he's doing it, it's that he's doing it to Canada to this extent. And so that tells me that if an arrangement can be worked out with Mexico, why wouldn't it be worked out with Canada? And the second I saw that message this morning from Trump saying, I'm going to speak to the leaders this morning and again this afternoon, and he started mentioning complaints about Canadian banking, I said, okay, here we go. This sounds like a negotiation. And what he did is he loaded the gun, pointed it at us, and with 2 minutes to midnight said, okay, now let's talk. It's up to Canada to decide whether we want to keep talking under these circumstances or call his bluff.
Alex, always appreciate your thoughts. And of course, you can read Alex's analysis on CBCNews.ca. Thank you for this. That is the CBC's Alex Panetta in Washington.
Thank you.